feel like a storm is kind of brewing in the Davies, Bayern, Real Madrid camp. Like, what is going on over there? So we kind of know the story of Alphonso Davies. It had been reported that he verbally agreed to join Real Madrid. We know he has one more year up until, the end of this year with Bayern. And we had even heard that Bayern, not that long ago, had offered an ultimatum to Alphonso Davies to just say, give us a yes or no. We just need to know, are you staying? Are you going? What's happening here? And all the numbers in between of what he's valued, right, gentlemen? But here the latest is Fabrizio Romano is reporting that Alphonso Davies' agent is now criticizing the ultimatum that Bayern gave his client to sign a new extension. Romano also reports that Real Madrid is prepared to open up talks with Bayern for an opening bid for Alphonso Davies. I don't know where your thoughts are on this entire situation, Wheels, because there are a lot of people here. Obviously, if you're a Bayern fan who's going to say, you got to give Bayern an answer. And then there are a lot of people here who will say, well, hold on a second. Clubs don't think twice when they want to do what they want to do with players. The player has every right to stand his ground and have his contract run out. Why should he be given an ultimatum and why should he kneel to it? What are your thoughts on this?
Well, strong words from Alphonso Davies' agent in response to this. And if this was going to be at least a negotiation that was done behind closed doors, not, sharing the process to the public, well, that's long gone out the window. I think that this was just his agent responding to Bayern Munich, basically saying our best and final offers on the table. Let us know within 2 weeks. To which Davies' agent just responds, this is ridiculous. We don't even understand where the sporting project is going. Tuchel's leaving. What's the manager going to look like? We'd like to understand what the lay of the land is. And by the way, Davies still has a year in his contract. So take it each to a certain degree. And Davies is permitted. Davies has all the power in this situation. There's no doubt about that. That's where his agent is absolutely right. Bayern Munich, based upon what's playing out, they're asking the player to do them a favor, let them know where he stands. But this is the thing. Is there any convincing that Davies will need when it comes to the Real Madrid sporting project? They have a pipeline of young Brazilian players. Endrick's the latest one that's going to be coming into the fray. Probably Mbappe, a young collection of star players that are going to be good for the foreseeable future. I'm not sure that takes much convincing. The Bayern Munich future looks much more cloudy, looks much more murky. For me, Andy, this just looks like negotiation. If they do push Bayern Munich a little bit more into the corner, that is Davies' camp, perhaps they get a little bit of a preferential fee in terms of negotiation between clubs, Bayern Munich and Real Madrid, and what that means for the player as well. I just like, if I'm the player and if I'm Davies' side of things, this is the last public statement I make. And I try to do everything else behind closed doors. This player has won just about everything for Bayern Munich. You want to make sure that they leave on positive terms when and if this transpires. It just looks like this is only going in one direction, and that is towards the exit door for Alphonso Davies. Now it's the decision for all parties to make. How do they want that relationship to come to an end? How do they bridge that gap? And how do they transition this player out? Remember, they play Arsenal in the Champions League upcoming. There are big games, and now all of a sudden this is becoming much more of a distraction than I'm assuming anyone wanted at this point.
And we know that even last year there were already so many things happening off the pitch, distractions there. Davies' agent even alluded to the fact that they were talking to Bayern before everything seemed to blow up behind the scenes, and then talks went on hold. And he says that a lot of his phone calls to Bayern went unanswered. So there's a little bit of back and forth going on here, Ollie. How do you think this ends?
I mean, it seems to me like a response from the Davies camp to the narrative that's been put out there. And what I would say is that, make people get unhappy maybe at agents talking to the media and so on. But there's more than one way to talk to the media. Not everyone puts their name on it. And there's an awful lot of briefings that seem to come out every time Alphonso Davies sits down and has contract negotiations with Bayern. I think I know what sides those briefings are probably coming from. So just because the club doesn't directly speak doesn't mean that they don't, in a way, speak and create stories and headlines in this situation in the same way that obviously giving quotes to a journalist here would. I can also understand why Davies and his agent are a little bit unhappy with the way these negotiations are playing out. Just to give some context to the numbers, and this is all stuff that's been reported in the media. Obviously, we don't know exactly how much players earn, but these come from reputable sources. Harry Kane was said to be earning around 25 million euros a year when he joined Bayern. Manuel Neuer is Thomas Müller and Leroy Sané are all said to be around 20 to 21 million. Then there's a group of players who have been reported in the range of 16 to 18 million. So you've got De Ligt, you've got Koeman, you've got Goretzka, Serge Gnabry. That seems like maybe the range that Davies would fit in. So for me to have a 14 million euro offer and an ultimatum put on that offer, take it or leave it, I don't know that I would be thrilled if I was Alphonso Davies with that being put on the table either. So I can see, whether you want to go public about it or not, I can see why there's a bit of frustration there. And I don't really understand Bayern's stance here of we've got to get this done now, as opposed to no, let's negotiate. Let's try and find a middle ground here. And if we don't, then we can do a deal in the summer. And everyone knows that that's an option that's very much on the table with Real Madrid.
Don't you think Bayern Munich's doing that though? Because they don't expect the player to sign a contract no matter what. And they're trying to wrangle back any sort of strength when it comes to the market. Like once it comes out that Davies wants to leave, then Bayern Munich then tries to take back the power and say, well, this is the price tag for this window, right? Isn't this part and parcel of negotiation? I'm not saying it's the right thing to do, by the way, but that's seemingly why they're doing it.
Go ahead, Ali.
I was just going to say
wait, I'll come in. Jordo, we haven't heard from you. Jordo, you respond.
No, I was just gonna say, I just want to bring into the fold because I agree with you guys, but the emotional aspect that goes with it. I think clubs as well, when you develop a player, when you want a player to re-sign as well, there's almost that pride attached to it, oh, you're gonna go somewhere else. Nah, this is what you're gonna sign for. And on the contrary, with Davies, if his deal and he wants to sign a new deal, Bayern Munich could be if he was a different type of player, it'd be oh, we'll wait till you end your contract to see what happens. This happens all the time. The last 6 months, it's hell for players. They're am I going to re-sign? But now they kind of, to Wheels' point, want to take back the power and be hey, this is what we're going to offer you. But it could be totally different if it wasn't Alphonso Davies, this type of situation. I feel like the emotional aspect plays into it a little bit.
But based upon money or team structure, does anyone actually think that he's going to stay with Bayern Munich?
There's some Bayern fans that absolutely
ruled it. I wouldn't totally rule it out.
You don't, because I would be shocked if he stayed. I would be shocked.
I know he's going, but there are Bayern fans thinking that this is still a top club, and I feel like Bayern, the way they look at their club, they feel as if it's an honor to play for them. There might be a handful of clubs that are above them, and Real Madrid is definitely top of the list. But there's Bayern fans thinking, why wouldn't you want to stay at Bayern? Look at all that you can win here. We compete for the Champions League every year. Why would you want to stay?
If you said to him 17, 18 million, here's who's the coach is going to be next year, I think he thinks about it. He still may go to Real Madrid anyway, but I don't think it's a flat, there's no chance here.
Yeah, and I think that's the argument also from Davies' camp, right? Is there's just so little information. And by the way, this is so typical in the sports world. And you're right. Davies is a player who's in a position of power. He can have his contract run out. And then there are other players who are not as popular, not as skilled, not as coveted. And then the clubs just leave them hanging. It's just whoever is in a position of power does whatever they want. And Davies is turning around and his camp is turning around saying, don't give us an ultimatum, because we are well within our right to be doing what it is that we're doing. So we'll see how this plays out, but it's going to get to the point where I kind of agree with you, where he won't stay at Bayern if this kind of bad blood just continues to boil. And also, I want you guys to remember, the next time you don't think you need a host, remember that moment where the two of you screwed up. You need a host to meet. You got
we got through it. We got through it very elegantly.
Yeah.
I want to say something to what Wheels was saying, to Wheels' point, just about exiting, right? I feel like it's inevitable, or it's very likely that Alphonso Davies will be leaving and going to Real Madrid. But I think this happens to a lot of players when they're about to leave, two ways. And it's not always from the player. It's sometimes from the player's camp, their agent. It's leave and you choose grace, or you can be loud and throwing your hands up and kicking. And I just hope it's the first one with Alphonso Davies. It's just all the work that he's done at Bayern, and this is the club. His career wouldn't be the same without that Bayern move. It's just to choose grace as you're dealing with these things. But again, to Ali's point, we don't know all the stuff that's been said. We don't know how many times they've called or not picked up or not answered. But I just hope when he's leaving, he bows out, and it's just a great story.
Davies isn't saying a thing. When he was asked that question at Canada Camp, he just stoic, just stood there like, no chance I'm taking the bait. This is what agents are for. The agent can go out and be the bad guy, be mad at him. This is part and parcel of negotiations. I just think Bayern Munich, it's very unlikely they're going to win, what is it, their 12th straight Bundesliga title. Like, it's a club where, they're going to have to make some big decisions. And Real Madrid, I mean, this team's built to win over the next 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Like, I don't know how you turn that down. I think that this is just part and parcel of negotiations.
Flip side too, Bayern, he's done a lot for you. Don't start slinging money either if he decides to leave, right? Like, it's the same for the club. Like, they love you when you stay, and then when you leave, it's like they just,
it
you
puts
take
pressure
it
on the club. Some of the decision making of the club, like that's who the pressure's on. So the club are the ones that are feeling it right now.
Just be nice to one another. How about that? Let's continue with
not how the world works.
You're talking about pro sports. It's not how it works. I know. Wouldn't it be nice if they just said, thank you for everything you've given us? Bye. We just saw, by the way, gentlemen, the U.S. win the Nations League once again. Some of their biggest named players put in some impressive performances. If we're going to put out a title of Kings of Concacaf, the Americans are still proven it's them in many ways. However,
USA.
Oh, I cannot with that chant. And I'm married to an American. Would you consider, however, Alphonso Davies to still be the best player in CONCACAF? And if not, who is? Jordan, I begin with you.
I think, again, you've been getting on me this week. Wheels has, Andy has, about picking a side and being on the fence. But I want to say this before I say my answer. I think who has the most potential is Alphonso Davies by far, but I can't put him at the best player right now. I think Christian Pulisic, I'm putting him as the best player in CONCACAF at the moment. Look, after he left Chelsea, you're looking at a guy who needed to land at a club and play well and be at his peak. And I think he's done that this season. He has a career high for goals with 12. He's at 25. I think going into this summer, again, knock on wood, if he stays healthy, he's going in as one of the most complete players in CONCACAF, and I rate him. I rate him highly. And I think Alphonso Davies, if he just has a good stretch, could be that guy. But right now, on what's today's date? March whatever.
March 28th.
28th.
March whatever it is. End of March.
Whatever.
I think Christian Pulisic is the guy.
Okay, Ollie, agree or disagree?
I disagree. I still think it's Alphonso Davies, and I think people maybe can get caught up in the moment in moments of form a little bit. But when you look over a longer period, I still think Alphonso Davies is a class above in CONCACAF. When you look at the longevity at the top level, playing for Bayern Munich for several years now, one of the biggest clubs in the world, one of the elite clubs in European football, playing every week. There's no one else in CONCACAF who can really compare to that other than Keylor Navas, who this season has been a backup goalkeeper for PSG. So Davies for me. I also would like to push back a little bit. I think there's a lot of discussion, obviously, about Davies' position, best position for Canada, and maybe the idea that he hasn't played his best football in a Canada shirt. And maybe there's a little bit of truth to that. But I don't know if we're maybe getting to the point where that narrative is a bit overplayed and his performances for Canada have been a bit underrated. Like, this guy is 23 years old. To go through a little list here, he scored one of the best goals I've ever seen from a Canadian player in a crucial World Cup qualifier against Panama, obviously. He set up the goals that got Canada a result in Mexico and in the United States during World Cup qualifying, got assists on both those goals. He scored in the CONCACAF Nations League semis to send Canada to their first continental final in 23 years. He is the only Canadian man to have scored at a FIFA World Cup still. A pretty big accomplishment. You can go even further back. He won the Gold Cup Golden Boot as a 16-year-old. It's like, I think maybe there's obviously such big expectations on his shoulders that I think sometimes his accomplishments in the Canada shirt already, again, at age 23, get a little bit overlooked when you compare to some of these other players and what they're doing for their nations. So Davies for me.
Okay, Wheels, take us home.
Well, first off, the CONCACAF region, the world should be looking out for what's going on here because the best dozen or so players are all 26 or younger. Like, the best players in this region are all very, very young, and that's very exciting. Of course, Alphonso Davies is the best player in CONCACAF, but I'll go on to say that the two best players in CONCACAF are both Canadian. It's Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David. Jonathan David, this season alone, has scored 22 goals and has 7 assists in 37 games played. I mean, Jordan says Pulisic. He is 12-8 for Bayern Munich in 39. Leon Bailey, who plays in a better league for me and plays for the 4th place team in Aston Villa, has 12-11 in 40 for Villa. So you can make the argument. I think you can make the argument that Pulisic might not even be in the top 5 in terms of players in this region. And transfer market, I mean, it's not the Bible per se, but they provide some guidelines on like what players' perceived value actually is. They have Pulisic at number 6. They have Davies and David. Santi Jimenez, he's 22. The Mexican striker. Leon Bailey. And then they have Edson Alvarez, who's playing in the Premier League week in, week out for West Ham, a very good central midfield player. I'd also like to put Anthony Robinson in the mix too, the fullback for Fulham. He's excellent every time I see him play, but he plays fullback. Look, it's not like coming down on Pulisic. It's just the last couple of years haven't been better. He's a wonderful player. And if we're going to judge players, I'm just judging overall, because when they play for their national team, the United States, like Davies and David aren't like, they don't have the benefit of playing with players like McKennie, Adams, Reyna. Like they're stacked. They're so loaded. It's a volume of really, really good players that the U.S. have. But the 2 best ones in Concacaf both wear the maple leaf. I'm not even sure there's much of an argument there.
And that's where I was going to differentiate. Jordan, I'll let you respond if you want to, but it seems like you're looking at what they're doing for their pro clubs, because yes, when the Americans get together, this is still a very strong team. This is a team that's making finals. This is a team that's winning trophies. But individually, and it's mostly, I guess, what they're doing more than anything with their pro team, is, it sounds like what you're basing it on. But Jordan, I'll give you a chance. Do you want to respond to the boys?
A little bit, quickly.
Completely crushing.
I mean, look, we're all friends. Everyone's entitled to their opinion. I think when Christian Pulisic puts on his jersey, Captain America for the States, I think he's a top-notch player, and I think he's top-notch in this region. Of course, as I said, it's like potential versus product. Potential with Davies and David is at the top, but I think if I'm going off of recency bias as well, I can't count out Pulisic. The people that you just named, though, you talk about Robinson Wheels. Are you saying Robinson is above there with Pulisic?
No. I just said that he's worthy of being in the discussion in like the top.
Look, and even
8, 9, 10.
Even with Ollie listing off all of Davies' accomplishments, look, there's not a bigger fan right now of Alphonso Davies than Jordan Wilson. Love the dude. I just think when it comes to CONCACAF, the top notch and the big dogs, I think Christian Pulisic should get a mention. I think he right now, as of March, whatever, I think he's one of the top. If not,
you stand your ground, Jordan. Don't get bossed around. You stand your ground.
He's
one of the top.
He's got to be top 5.
This is why I love it when you guys pick.
I was just saying, according to transfer market, he's number 6 in terms of value.
Can take a seat.
I hear you saying.
He plays every week for AC Milan and it's like scoring goals.
But I will say this: AC Milan in a very weak Serie A again this season.
Well,
like,
but can we say
Leon Bailey's playing all the time for the 4th place team in the Premier League right now? Like,
yeah,
he's
Bailey should be up there as well.
To sleep on. Okay, so Edson Alvarez, would you put him down in Pulisic? All I'm saying is that there's conversation. Pulisic, I might think he's better than Santi Jimenez, but to ask Mexican fans what they think his future is,
Jimenez is not in this.
And what he can do. He scored a lot of goals this season. Look, I'll stand by what I said. The 2 top players in this region are Canadian. Then it could be Pulisic, Bailey, Jimenez, Alvarez. There's a group of players right there, but they're all behind the 2 Canadians.
I love Jonathan David, but I think you got to give a bit more weight and respect to Pulisic playing for AC Milan and McKennie at Juventus as well.
22 goals
those are big clubs.
I get it.
Yeah, for Lille and Ligue 1, it's a little bit of a step down for me. Nothing against Jonathan David. He's a fantastic player.
We'll see where he lands this summer.
Those are 2 big Italian clubs.
To be continued with this conversation, because I love it. It's a good one. It's a good debate to have.